Hello, this is Crazy Horse with No Reservations Theology. So this video is a response to pretty much the increased interest in Mormonism or the belief system of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and is in particular a response to what has been going around, first introduced on the Inspiring Philosophy channel, and then later was expounded on by Joe Heschmeyer on Matt Fradd's Pipes with Aquinas channel. The claim in particular being that Latter-day Saints or Mormons are atheists. So I myself am a Catholic. I went to Brigham Young University, Idaho, so I have a little bit of, I don't like saying an insider knowledge. It's such a relative term. But really, I understand the belief system of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints intimately, and just how widely that can vary. So I'm going to start off a series on this channel called The Mormon Question, sort of tongue-in-cheek referring to the Jewish question of the 19th century, but as what I'm going to start calling the Christian apologetics industrial complex. You have things like Apologetics Roadshow, Inspiring Philosophy, Redeemed Zoomer, Catholic Answers. They're even Truth Unites. They're sort of in this alliance with each other, and that's the reason why I kind of take on the name of Crazy Horse, of No Reservations. I'm not signing that treaty. I will never sign that treaty. I will stay off the reservation. So this Christian apologetics industrial complex with Matt Fradd on Pints with Aquinas, with Catholic Answers, with Redeemed Zoomer, with Inspiring Philosophy, they all seem to have something to say about Mormonism, and they all seem to come to the conclusion that not only are Mormons heretical, they're not even Christians at all. And not only are they not even Christians at all, they've pushed it to the point of axiomatic atheism. So I'm not even going to get into axiomatic atheism, because if you follow that axiom to its logical conclusion, Sikhs are atheists, Hindus, basically any non-Abrahamic religion or any religion that does not come directly from cross-contamination with classical Greek philosophy is going to be considered axiomatically atheist. So I'm not even going to touch that premises, but I will start this as episode 1, what is a Christian? So whenever I initially brought this up to my brother, I initially had 3 criterion. I think I'm going to add a 4th for this. That my brother accused me of a Texas sharpshooter fallacy, because the 3 criterion that I came up with were the anthropological criterion, the intentional criteria, and the historical criteria. So I initially came up with this to answer the what is a woman controversy that for some reason is controversial, but there should be some objective way of answering what is a woman just on a philosophical basis without getting into identity politics or whatnot, that anybody of good faith or goodwill should be able to answer this question easily. If the answer is so obvious, then there should be obvious criteria to answer it. So first, we have the anthropological criteria. Would a uninterested observer, which is what an anthropologist is, would an uninterested observer say it swims like a duck, it quacks like a duck, has feathers like a duck? Is it enough like a duck or enough like X identity to be considered X person equals Y identity? Is X person enough like Y identity for them to equal Y identity based on a uninterested observation? Second is the intentional criteria. Does this person even want to be this identity? So if they want to be this identity, that actually goes in the positive column. And then there's the historical criteria, what I was calling the time machine criteria. If you go into a time machine in any at a random point in history, would this person more or less likely be correlated? Would this X person be more or less correlated with this Y identity? So I brought this up to a friend of mine, and he actually gave me the encouragement to map it onto the four causes, which I think would work immensely more. So we have the anthropological cause onto the material cause. What is the thing made of? Is the material cause. So the anthropological cause, if we're asking this question of are Mormons Christians, and what a uninterested observer might be looking for to identify a Christian, if you're walking into a Latter-day Saint home, are you seeing pictures of Jesus? Are you seeing Sunday worship? Are you seeing a Bible in the home? Are you seeing that Bible being read? So if you are seeing those things as an uninterested observer, you don't care about, is the Trinity real, or even is there such a thing as God? You're not worried about the doctrines of the faith. You're worried about what can be observed in a social scientific fashion. And as far as what can be observed on the anthropological criteria, Mormons check out. The second, the intentional cause. Does X person want to be called Y identity? So this is one of those things where it gets tricky, because there are identities that you are voluntarily known as, and then there are other identities that you are involuntarily known as. So, for example, being black, you may like it or not, if you have black skin, you fit into the criteria of black, regardless of what Joe Biden says about your voting pattern. So, with the intentional cause, does this person want to be this? Or, vice versa with the black thing. You have someone who is white who wants to be black. No matter how much they want it, then it that's a line that just can't be crossed. So this is where this falls in with what is a woman. A trans woman wants to be a woman, but that is a line that necessarily can't be crossed, because they're failing in the other two categories, the historical and the anthropological. So we so in my initial estimate, I'd say that you only had to check mark 2, because the historical criteria is so difficult to meet. Because depending on where you land in that time machine, you could or could not be considered Y identity. So that's because the historical criteria was so vague. But now with the mapping it onto the four causes, so we have the anthropological criteria mapping on to the material cause. Then we have the historical criteria mapping onto the effective cause. Where does it come from? Then we have the formal cause mapping onto the intentional cause. Form in Aristotelian logic is very spiritual. So this is where intention or agency would enter into the equation of, does it have the form? Usually people talk about a table. Does it have the form of a table? And uh, forms in Platonic or Aristotelian logic are very spiritual. So this is where we would include agency of, does a Latter-day Saint have the form of a Christian? And that would fall into the criteria of intention. Does a Latter-day Saint intend to be a Christian? I would say astoundingly 10 out of 10, yes, they intend to be a Christian, because if you just take someone like Jacob Hansen's word from it, in his interview with Ruslan, he said, and I quote, "I desperately want to follow Jesus Christ." That is the intention of being a Christian. And finally, you have the final cause, which I'm going to call the teleological criterion. Are they doing the thing? Is X person doing the thing that Y identity does? Once again, there are passive identities. The one that I just used is being black. There's not really a telos of fulfillment of being a black man or woman. But once again, you have voluntary identities like being a Christian. Is this person fulfilling the teleological criterion of being a Christian? Some would say, well, part of that teleological criterion is believing in the Trinity. However, I would say believing in the Trinity is somewhat passive. It's not acting out something, it's passively assenting to something. What are the actions of Latter-day Saints? And I would say that the two major teleological requirements of a Christian, and I'm sure if this gets enough traction, I don't have a very popular channel. If this gets enough traction, people are going to be, hitting me back, and I am very open to that. I'm not saying that I'm the final authority, but I would say the two things that really mark out the telos of a Christian is the great commandment, as I have loved you, love one another, and the great commission, go forth unto all nations, making disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So if Latter-day Saints are doing nothing else, they are definitely going out into the world attempting to fulfill the Great Commission. And if Latter-day Saints have a reputation for nothing else, it's how star-spangled nice they are to everyone. I would say that those are the two teleological signs of being a Christian. So we had the anthropological mapping on to the material cause. We had the historical criteria mapping onto the effective cause. We have the formal cause mapping onto the intentional criteria, and we have the final cause mapping onto a teleological criterion. So, for the sake of brevity, this is where I'll leave off. But the next section, the next episode that I will do is talking about the history of, at least from a Catholic perspective, of what has led us to the Mormon question, starting at a little bit before the 2001 Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith decision on Latter-day Saint baptisms, what historically went into making that decision, and where we have gone with that decision since then. So until then, I'm Crazy Horse with No Reservations Theology, and remember, Reformed theology is evil and Mormons are Christians.